Well, I'm going to move on to my last question before we throw to the audience and ask, open things up a little bit. And this question is really the sort of the crystal ball question. You know, look into your crystal ball and think about the future. How do you think about the kind of work you're doing now in this field with Innerscope and other companies and unconscious measures? And where do you see all this going? And maybe we'll work backwards and start with you, Libby.
You know, I believe today consumers have more information and are better educated about what they buy than ever before, and they're going to continue to become more educated. I also think they're more cynical than they've ever been before. So I think that when you're dealing with trying to get feedback from consumers and you're dealing with a functional product, I believe that if you have an authentic benefit value story, I think you're going to get the sort of positive response that you need. But I think that the more emotionally engaging products or services, you really need to be able to gauge what's going to connect with the consumer, and it's going to be more and more difficult, as I said, because they're going to become more and more skeptical and more cynical. So understanding what really does resonate positively, emotionally with consumers, I think is going to become harder than ever, because I just believe people have a filter that they didn't have before, and they automatically discard a lot of what they hear. So you have to make sure you're authentic and that you're really connecting. So
the more skeptical the world becomes, all the more reason to use more unconscious measures.
Correct.
Maria?
You know, just one small thing to add to that, and on top of all that, I think people are so inundated with information coming from all different directions and different media that I think the unconscious is going to be even more important to measure.
Great. Stacey?
I think that where you're really going to be using products like Innerscope is going to be in understanding how to be better storytellers. I think the communication challenges that we have are already pretty immense. And we're fighting against lots of different obstacles. Fragmentation is an obstacle. Lack of attention is an obstacle. The way that we tell stories, whether they be stories for our brands, they be in content, is going to change across the different platforms that we use. And we're going to tell them differently in radio than we're going to tell them on air and online and on iPads and iPhones and whatever is next. And I really see that the future is in what's the right way to craft stories on the right platforms that are engaging, and that's where you come in. So how do we create that emotional connection so that we are creating communication, whether it's for us in the media or it's for a brand.
And that's one of the most active areas that the Innerscope's involved in right now, is really the cross-platform synergy question, how these different platforms, not only optimizing within one, but across them. I think that's a really hard question in an evolving media landscape. Great. Sebastian, before we throw it to the audience,
yes.
What does your crystal ball say?
I don't know if there's a crystal ball in this area. I think we need to learn how to work with that. I don't think that, for instance, having unconscious measure will be the universal panacea. Okay, and we need really to understand what we can get from that. So, for instance, one of the striking moments when we started to work with all these cognitive science tools is that we are using very small sample of people. And when discussing with you guys, you say, well, it's true that after 20, 25 people, we have collected all the information we need and we don't have extra information. So I came to a point where I was wondering what we are really collecting. Is it a universal response to a stimuli? And that's maybe the truth, because if I shout now, probably I will see some kind of emotional response the same way for everybody in the room. So we need to understand that. And obviously, having unconscious measurement is great because it can overcome some of the existing bias we have with our research. I don't like, in fact, traditional research because I think there's not a new economy versus an old economy. There's market research. It's just evolving, but that's the point. So we need to learn about how we can really cope with a new type of bias, and you have to help us on this because it's a new era. It's about the lexicon, it's about the processes, but also about how we understand the boundaries of that so that we can progress in the future. So that would be my crystal ball requirement.
Great. And we'll refer to them as conscious and unconscious measures. Maybe that will help.